we've got some new polls to talk about. Brand new polls, ladies and gentlemen, that really, I think, shed some light on what's going on in the Kamala versus Trump camp. Because everybody's been all excited, right? The media's like, oh, rah, 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 rah. The hype is unlike anything I've really ever seen. I mean, you can tell this is very orchestrated. Everybody got their marching orders. And so they're consequently singing Kamala's praises all day long. Naturally, as a result of that, you would expect some upside in the polls. I mean, heck, I'd expect a lot more upside. A lot more, considering everything. We have a lot of Democrats out there that were like, I want to vote for the Democrat Party, I just can't vote for Joe. And so you think they'd be thrilled. You'd think they'd be over the moon with the idea that Kamala Harris is there. I mean, again, there's a little honeymoon that goes on, right? As soon as somebody is announced, and then reality sets in. And I'm such a realist. And I think that we need to look at all of these polls with that dose of reality. So let me share with you first when it comes to sort of favorability. Like, do people like her? Or do they like Trump? We're going to get into the national ones and we'll get into the Midwest in a second. But first of all, okay, here's Donald Trump. So he's not exactly like the most, I mean, I'm just being honest here, right? I happen to like him a lot. I think he's funny. I think he's got a lot of great ideas, but he's not everybody's cup of tea, right? But take a look at this. So these are most recent favorability polls. And what you see, this comes from Nate Silver's 538, favorable versus unfavorable, he tends to fare pretty well. I mean, the big data poll from the 26th to the 28th shows him at favorability ratings of 51% to 48% unfavorable. And then you got July 26th through 28th, favorable at 50%, unfavorable at 48%. The only outlier is this American Pulse research and polling, which has his favorable kind of, well, a little under the water a little bit, unfavorable at 52% versus favorable at 47%. But nonetheless, you know what? I'll take that. I'll take that as a win because, people are kind of split down the middle, but for the most part, even as sort of high beta, I'm using sort of a market stock term there, even as high beta as he is, he still actually scores decently well, especially when you compare him, say, to Kamala Harris. So let's take a look at the favorability, unfavorability ratings on Kamala Harris. And what you see is that she's not faring so great here. I mean, look at her here. Again, the American Pulse being the outlier, but favorable is 50% versus unfavorable 47%. But then go over to those big data polls taken through the 26th and 28th. And what you see is favorable at 48% versus unfavorable at 50%. And similar situation, 47% favorable versus unfavorable at 50%. See, I think that's kind of a big deal. In light of her being new on the scene. She's like the shiny new toy that everybody's so excited about. So you'd think that the favorability ratings would be really, really high, would you not? And yet they're not. They're basically not much better than Trump's. I'd say Trump's are better than hers. So what is that telling you? Tells me that the honeymoon is going to be short-lived, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to another poll. I mean, overall, he's still ahead. That's what they don't tell you, right? They're like, oh, she's climbing, she's climbing, she's climbing. They're so enthusiastic. The cheerleaders clapping all the way up that mountain there. You can do it, Kamala, you can do it. And if you look at the national polls, he is still ahead. But let's dig a little deeper. And this is what really freaks the media out right now. So you can see my scribbles all over this if you're watching us live on YouTube. By the way, subscribe, hit like, share, do all that good stuff for me, please. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, wonderful. Spotify, wonderful. We love it. Make sure you give us 5 stars and a nice little note. Anyway, take a look at some of these in the Midwest. We've got Wisconsin, we've got Pennsylvania, Nevada, Michigan, Arizona, Ohio. Well, I mean, Wisconsin was always going to be tough. Like, that's just the reality for Trump. And this has always been kind of dicey. It freaked everyone out when you started to see Trump really pulling ahead in Wisconsin. Now that's kind of even once again. So we're looking at, I'm going to lean in really closely, and you look at Harris at 48% compared with Trump's 46% there. I think he can still take that. I mean, Wisconsin, I think, is still very, very, very much in play. And once this honeymoon really starts to drift off and people start to see maybe that the emperor has no clothes and there's not a lot of there and she's kind of radical, I don't think that's going to play in Peoria or in Wisconsin. Thank you very much. Then you get over to Pennsylvania. Again, she's actually a little, well, she's 48% there to 45%. So she's up 3 there in Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania has always been tricky. He started to lead against Biden, but I think that can be turned around too. Again, if you just take into this acknowledgement that she should be actually faring a whole lot better, right? But I think people realize that the Democrat policies have not served them well. So let's go over to Nevada. Nevada at 45 to 46. So leading there in Nevada. I think, yeah, leading by a point in Nevada. If you look at Michigan, you're looking at a tie. Again, I think he squeaks out a game there in Michigan. I still think people are hesitant when it comes to Donald Trump to say, yeah, I like Trump. Yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump. So you still have a situation where he polls a little bit more weakly than, say, his Democrat alternative. And then you go over to Arizona, and he's killing it, up 5. And then, whoo, in Ohio, which is J.D. Vance territory, he's up 10. So you get a solid performance there in Ohio, pretty solid in Arizona. It's one of the reasons why she may be looking at Mark Kelly as a possible contender to give her a little bit more oomph there in Arizona. But, you know, Arizona is struggling with the border issue. And let's face it, this was Kamala's issue. And Kamala has not done so well on the border, ladies and gentlemen. I'm stating the obvious and then some. Let's go over to Kevin McCarthy, who was on Fox just last night and said something that I think was spot on, because he was talking about how early it is, right, in this particular stage. And there is a honeymoon, and she just came on the scene effectively as a candidate just a couple days ago. And so what happens is people get to know her a little bit better and the reality starts to sink in. It could be like Dukakis all over again. Let's cue the tape from McCarthy.
Wait until they get a few moments with her. This is a lot like 1988. Dukakis was sitting in mid-July, 17 points up, right? And then we found out he was weak on crime. He was letting Willie Horton out. Wait till you see her. She's a Soros prosecutor. She's worse. And then we found out, we saw Dukakis in that helmet, unpresidential. Think about the decisions that she's going to make in the process.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. And actually, that same show went out and did this man on the street thing. I actually put it in the shorts feed, so go check it out, where they're talking to people at a Kamala rally, and they're like, hey, you know, why do you like her? And nobody can actually define why. They can't define one accomplishment of Kamala Harris's. So I think, again, when we talk about honeymoons in politics, those are important, and you want the honeymoon phase to last as long as it possibly can. Americans, you know, they know what they're getting with Trump. And they know that the economy was better with Trump. They know that they could afford more with Trump. They felt perhaps a little safer with Trump. They knew that the border was not going to spin out of control in the way that it has under this administration. And so when push comes to shove, as we approach November, what I anticipate is that her unfavorability ratings will go higher and higher and higher. We know what his are, right? Like, again, it's kind of already been tested. And so you're going to see his favorability and unfavorability stay consistent. But the question is, what happens to her? And increasingly, I suspect that her unfavorabilities go up. And then when you look at places like Wisconsin, and you look at places like Pennsylvania, and you look at places like Michigan, they're going to say, yeah, you know, my life is not so great right now. My life is not great because of the policies that were put in place by the Biden-Harris administration. Okay, so Biden can't take all the blame. In fact, sometimes I wonder what Biden was even doing. Like, he's so zoned out, right? Did he have any say over anything that was going on economically or on the border, et cetera? No, that was her. That was her. And so it's going to come back to bite her in the you-know-what, shall we say. Of course, the honeymoon's a big deal, right? On social media, you look at all the excitement about Kamala Harris. I read these headlines every single day, and I'm just blown away. It's sort of nauseating. Okay, guys, tell us what you really think.